What's going on, guys? Vulkan here, and today we're talking Marvel Avengers. So this weekend we got our first hands-on impression at the new Avengers action RPG. Now this game built up quite a bit of hype leading into this beta with all of their war table live streams showing off tons of loot, missions, specialized skill trees, a full roster of heroes, and challenging content like the harm rooms. And many people, right, including myself, thought this was going to be more of like a Destiny style game, but after playing for a few hours, I mean, this is definitely not the case. It is not a Destiny style game. I'm not saying it's a bad game, it's just something different. It ties a little bit closer to a brawler style game. So before we get into this, I did want to point out that all of this gameplay was captured on the original PS4. I never upgraded to a PS4 Pro. Almost all my stuff's on PC these days. But if you do have a PS4 Pro, then the gameplay will most likely look better. It'll run smoother because I had quite a few noticeable frame rate drops when things got pretty chaotic. But for the most part, it ran okay. Just expect if you have the baseline PS4, you're going to run into some performance issues. So let's move into the beta and let's talk about what exactly comes with it and how our impressions were, right? Our first time getting our hands on the Avengers action RPG. So right out of the gate, the devs drop you into an introductory mission where the Avengers have to stop an attack on the Golden Gate Bridge. This is one of the more played out missions that we've seen so far from a lot of the different live streams. But during this mission, you get to play as all of the heroes. You get to learn combat basics, you get to learn all their special abilities, and the beta itself is missing Captain America and Thor as playable heroes after this mission. So if you're looking forward to spending more time as either of those, you're going to have to wait for the full game, or maybe they'll unlock them as the beta weekends go onward. But for now, you do not have access to either of those heroes. So the mission itself was pretty solid. I mean, it really kind of set the tone for how intense some of these missions can be. And even as someone who wouldn't call themselves a superhero fan, I was still pumped up at some of the fight scenes. They were just fun, they were high energy, and it was just exciting. So I really like the sequences that Crystal Dynamics put together there. But shortly after you finish the first couple tutorial missions, you end up at your home base, the Chimera, which is a flying warship and serves as your town hub. It has all kinds of like collectibles and secrets scattered all over it for you to go out and find. And the Chimera is also where you're going to find the war table, which is going to be your most visited piece of the game since it's where you choose your missions and can assemble your strike team of friends to play with. It also shows all of your available missions, the rewards for those missions, any iconic missions you might have. And iconic missions are ones where you have to play as a certain hero to progress that particular hero's story. So we have access to one right now, and it's for the Hulk. Most of these missions you're going to see on the war table are fast, and I'm talking under 10 minutes, sometimes even under 5 minutes if you're really booking it and your group is efficient. Others are drawn out a little bit longer to progress the story. These ones take about 20 minutes from start to finish. They have more engaging boss battles, and they're more of a complete mission, I would say. The other ones are more like quick skirmishes. It could be something like dropping into this area, this forested area, and you need to go just kill this group of elites. And once you kill that group of elites, the mission is over, you collect your reward, and you're kicked out, and you can choose your next mission. So it's more of like a bounty, I would say, than an actual story mission itself, and the beta is littered with those. I was actually kind of disappointed that we didn't have more story missions or more of the longer missions that I could actually play through, because it just seemed like I was chaining together a bunch of 5-minute to 10-minute missions, and it just wasn't exactly engaging. But for a good chunk of the beta, you're going to be playing as the Hulk, or Kamala Khan, who is a girl that can kind of stretch and grow like Elastigirl from The Incredibles. And after you reach a certain milestone, the beta just unlocks Black Widow and Iron Man for you to play as. The story itself suggests we actually have to go out and find them to unlock them in the main game, which makes much more sense. But for the sake of the beta, they just kind of give them to you like, hey, here, play with Black Widow and Iron Man and have a blast. So, and both those characters are super fun. So, we've talked about how the beta works. Let's talk about how the beta actually feels to play. From the jump, combat is the biggest thing in this game, right? You're spending the majority, 90% of your time in combat. And the combat itself feels both clunky and satisfying. So this game involves a ton of button mashing. As I mentioned earlier, it is a brawler style game, so you're going to be smashing buttons all day, and I mean a ton of it, weaving together light attacks and heavy attacks to form combos. These combos keep your enemies stunned during the chain, and you feel like you're just a badass. You're just smashing things into the ground. However, not everything goes extremely smoothly, right? If you're hit with an opponent's heavy attack, then you're staggered, opens you up for heavy damage, so you have to be careful and cautious about how you go into combat, and always be ready to dodge. That's the biggest thing, always be ready to dodge. And the dodging system in this game feels a lot like Assassin's Creed, where your enemy will show an indicator when they're attacking, giving the player a chance to dodge and avoid the attack. And this can be spammed to basically just dance around the battlefield, dodging all of the attacks while you work in some jabs in between. And that's the part of combat that feels so smooth and satisfying. Just taking on a group of enemies 1v10 and just beating the hell out of them, coming out on top, collecting your loot and your crafting resources, and moving on. Now, the part of combat that feels clunky is the ranged combat. It just doesn't flow as well as I would like it to, because you have to stop your attacks, hold down a trigger to activate ranged attack mode, line up your attack, and then let it rip. And the problem here is that if you're in the middle of a massive brawl and suddenly you're standing still trying to knock some drone out of the sky, then you get hit by some enemies, which ends up staggering you. Then you get massacred from orbit by the same drone that you were trying to snipe out of the sky, and it can lead to some pretty brutal chains against you and a frustrating situation, especially on harder modes. Which, for a game that features such fun and fluid melee combat, it's just disappointing to see that ranged combat can't have that same feeling or fluidity to it. Outside of the button mashing side of combat, you also have skills called heroic abilities, and these are your cooldowns that can really dish out some serious damage, or they can buff and heal allies, and all of these are signature to that particular hero. For instance, you have Iron Man's chest beam, right? He can just blast things out with his unibeam and just wipe things off the field. You also have Hulk, where he just goes, smash attack, thunderclap. He does all of these kind of really cool things that are very Hulk-like or very Iron Man-like. And the biggest thing here is I honestly kept forgetting to use these skills, because I would just chain together light and heavy attacks and that would get the job done most of the time. But really they came into play when I was fighting bosses or meteor enemies, where these things would end up taking the spotlight. Being able to just lop off huge chunks of health on bosses is incredibly satisfying. It never gets old. It makes things go so much smoother, and it gives those abilities more weight and impact. Now, they are on semi-long cooldowns, but you can reduce that down using gear. And then you have your ultimate attack, which is built to really turn the tide of battle. For instance, Iron Man has Hulk Buster, Hulk has his Thunderclap ability, which blows everything out. Kamala Khan has Embiggen, where she grows into a giant and just wipes people off the field. So there's a whole bunch of really cool things that are all built into these heroes. And I feel like all of the ultimate abilities truly are impactful, because there's nothing worse than activating an ultimate and it doesn't do anything. These ones felt good to use, and they truly did turn the tide of battle at times. In terms of heroes, each one has its own fighting style, and then they have special gear and skill trees to flesh out that play style. So for instance, Iron Man's skill trees are dependent on his equipped gear, like missiles versus lasers, while Kamala Khan has a balanced set of trees built for most situations. And most of the perks that I saw on these trees unlocked new combos, defensive things like parries, or added some extra flavor to the hero's skills to make them more impactful. Could be like a damage element or something like that. And really, I didn't see anything in here that was a brand new skill or something that you could swap out with an existing skill. So what you have right now for your hero is what you have for your hero. Hopefully down the road, they'll unlock some new things, they'll give us some new things to play with, and we can start swapping out some of our skills to maybe customize our heroes a little bit more than the default settings. Now, during my time with the beta, I was able to get a few heroes to around level 15. I collected quite a bit of gear, and I want to talk about loot. Loot in this game is very mid-grade, I would say, right? It's not something overly deep with tons of affixes and complexity, but it's more than just simple stats on pieces of gear. You're going to see bonuses that you can synergize together to drive towards a certain damage element, or something like maximizing cooldown reduction. And the gear you don't need can be dismantled for upgrade materials, which when you upgrade a piece of gear, it increases its power and can potentially unlock new affixes, which then you can slot into your build. Each hero does have different gear that they can equip, and unfortunately, it doesn't change the look of your character at all. That is left to the cosmetics tab, which we'll get to in a second. So overall, I think the loot situation is fine for a game like this. Loot drops at a semi-frequent pace. You get decent rewards for your mission completions. There are certain situations where you get something that's like, wow, this is really cool. I can actually, use this or build around it. Like I'm going to deal a bunch of gamma damage, or I want a bunch of PIM particles that I can use to make my opponents incredibly small and reduce their damage output. So there's a lot of different things you can do in here, and I feel like it is adequate for what the game itself is. It's not a full-blown looter, it's a brawler with a loot system tacked on, and I feel like that's okay. So cosmetics in this game, let's talk about that, because I said the loot you equip doesn't change your appearance, so something needs to, and that is cosmetics. These are the ultimate way to flex to other players what challenges you completed or how much money you've spent in the marketplace on things like costumes and nameplates. And luckily, marketplace-wise, that's all that's out there. There's nothing power related. All of the selections are pretty fair in my opinion, and they're all just costumes, nameplates, emotes, things like that. Plus, they do have a challenge card system built into the game, which offers cosmetics that you can unlock for that specific hero when you complete dailies and weeklies. So basically, you're going to have multiple ways to earn free costumes, nameplates, and emotes just by playing the game. But if there's something you really, really want, you can always buy it in the marketplace for some cash. And I'm okay with this system. I feel like it's not overbearing, and because people will want their hero to have a specific look, I think the developers, will end up making enough money to continue developing for the game. As long as they keep it focused on cosmetics, it shouldn't be a problem. There's already a few things out there that I'm waiting to see if they show up on the challenge card, or maybe during a sale, because I want my Iron Man to look a specific way. So the last thing I want to talk about is group content. And right now you have various missions to complete. We talked about that, but you also have something known as the harm room, HARM room. And these are wave-based battles that get more difficult as you progress and are great for testing out like skills against hordes of enemies and mini bosses. And to be honest, I'm pretty disappointed with the harm rooms. I was not satisfied. I was really expecting something a little more engaging in these, like a simulated zone or a simulated map to explore. Instead, it was a gray box with platforms, kind of like a holodeck that wasn't turned on. You combine that with the mediocre enemies, and it wasn't exciting. It wasn't exciting to explore, it wasn't exciting to do, and it just was bland. So I really hope they expand on this idea, make the rooms more complex, because if not, I just cannot see people spending more time in these rooms than needed to complete a challenge or an achievement. And that leads us to our next thing, hives. And this was something that a developer spoke about as a high-end group content, stuffed full of gear and challenges for you to go out and complete. Now, we don't know much about these yet, but hopefully we'll see a teaser or like a showcase in a stream before launch, because right now I am not seeing a huge reason to play this game long term outside of literally just logging in and smashing some bad guys with some friends, which sucks because this is a game that's fun to play and it's satisfying to play for the most part. So I want to see some sort of long-term game plans for this. And from a beta standpoint, it was a good taste, right? But I want to see what comes next. What does the full experience look like? What does post-launch look like? Are they truly invested in this game, or is this something that they're going to push out, maybe 1 or 2 DLC, and then move on to something else? So that's my biggest question, but I want to hear what you guys think. Who actually went out there and played it? What did you guys think? Do you guys agree with my opinion? Disagree with my opinion? What's your guys' favorite hero? Do you think the gear system's deep enough? Did you guys like the harm rooms? I definitely want to hear from everybody, including those who don't have access to it. How does this all sound? Is this kind of what you thought the game was going to be? Let's get to talking about it in the comment section below. But as always, thank you guys so much for watching. This has been Vulkan, and I'll talk to you guys next time.